Adam walked through the forest. He had no trail as he moved between the thick trees. Brushing aside a branch, he found himself before an immense tree, one that towered over the rest of the forest. Sitting by its trunk was a young woman. He was in awe of her looks. His mouth fell open, and she beckoned him to join her. Welcome to Mythical Phylogeny Adventures. I'm your guide, Jason. Today, we meet the enchanting Dryads. Let's see what the truth is of these forest spirits. The term Dryad comes from ancient Greek legends. They are a subclass of nymph, similar to the Nereids of the sea. Nymphs are a type of spirit, normally depicted as a young woman, though they are bound to a location, be it a forest, the ocean, and so forth. While nymphs are divine creatures, they are mortal. They possess innate healing and shape-shifting powers. The Dryads are bound to the forest, but in some versions, to a particular tree, and when the tree dies, so did the Dryad. This particular type was called a Hamadryad, but that trait spread to others. Originally, only the Hamadryad lived in the trees, and the regular Dryads lived in the forest. Now, the first Dryads were only tied to oak trees, but in time, other names for other trees arose. Daphne were laurel trees. Epimeledius were apple trees. They also tended to sheep, and more importantly, were charged with caring for the golden apples which the gods sought. Elie lived in ash. They were the children of Gaia from Uranus' blood, and tended to the baby Zeus. There isn't much evidence supporting them being worshipped. However, there are mentions of those who harm trees going and asking for forgiveness. In some cases, it means making offerings. Like many nymphs, they are known to take lovers, both mortal and divine. And this brings up an issue. Their children have gone on to be gods, mortal heroes, and other Dryads. What is going on here? How many of you remember the Punnett square? It is a tool used to determine the likelihood of a genetic trait being inherited. Let's set up capital D as divine and lowercase d as mortal. Gods would be just two big D's, and mere mortals are two small d's. Now, there is a trait called dominance, where the big D completely masks the lowercase d. But this isn't what we're seeing with the demigods. Now, a demigod is usually incredible. So what we have here is incomplete dominance, or a middle ground of the two. But this hasn't answered our question about the Dryads. They are a sort of divine mortal. But they are definitely different than a demigod. But there is also co-dominance. That would give us D1 for god and D2 for nymph. This is like blood types, A, B, AB, and O types. D1 and little d is a demigod, but D2 and little d is a nymph. But if a Dryad is D2 and little d, then with a mortal, they can have a mortal child. And for a god and nymph pair, a D2 little d could pair with a D1 D1 god and produce D2 D1, which could be a god due to co-dominance, or a demigod with D1 and little d. And that last part doesn't work. So, we will need big I for immortal and little I for mortal. Gods are D1 and big I, while nymphs are big D2 and little I. Is this starting to make sense? Genetics is actually much more complicated, usually involving multiple different genes that can block or enhance other traits. For human hair alone, you are looking in the neighborhood of 124 different genes. Factoring in divine heritage, you can see why it is quickly getting complicated. This is more likely, since they are also said to mate and reproduce with satyrs. So why would a Hamadryad die if its tree dies? Nymphs are tied to locations, and a tree is a location. It is a landmark which you can guide yourself with. And if that landmark is destroyed, it loses its purpose. Potentially, the Hamadryad is a younger and weaker one. As they mature, their domain expands through the forest from a single tree. Potentially, other nymphs have the same issue, but it isn't seen as much due to living at sea in other less specific locations. There are a few tales of them spontaneously being born from the forest itself. Could a forest collect sufficient divine energy from prayer and other events to bring forth life? Well, no. But the answer can be from Gaia, the Earth Goddess. She could be bringing forth the Dryads of her own will. If the Dryads sound like the Lorax, they are, only stronger. They are usually only said to be aggressive to those who harm their forest. So, don't damage the trees. No starting fires or cutting down trees. Except no. I talked about this before, but forests survive better when properly taken care of, clearing out heavy underbrush and dead trees. So, would a Dryad let you? Maybe. It depends on the individual. If not, make amends before getting to work. This applies to any time that you need to cut down a tree. Pray and make offerings as needed. But sometimes that won't work, and things get complicated. The Dryad will seek to punish you. Conceptually, their magic seems to mirror that of a druid. That means control of plants and beasts. They can even shapeshift, usually taking the form of forest creatures or a woman. Now, fighting one will be tied to a location, and that is their forest. Don't be surprised if the forest seems to move around you, getting you lost in the woods, confused and disoriented. That is when they will strike. Roots will bind you, lash you like whips, and send wild animals after you. Their attacks will come from all around. You can disperse the beast with a strong fear spell. This is a divine sort of magic, so a simple counterspell may not silence her magic. But there are weaknesses. There are forests and trees. But which tree is it? The best place to hide a tree is in a forest, of course. If you can destroy it, they will fall. Normally, I would never suggest this, but burn it down. Start a massive fire and turn the forest to ash. Desperate times call for desperate measures, right? But if you can control insects, there are many species which can destroy trees. Yes, there are ways to take it out. Strong cold magic and targeted lightning magic could take out the tree. Magic will be your best option here. As for less drastic measures, if you venture into the forest, bring an axe to cut down the tree. Chainmail or plate will be the best armor to protect you from the pounding roots or fangs of animals. Yet, couldn't you just leave the forest and never return? I mean, the Dryad can't leave the forest, so she can't chase you. And you are correct on that front. But their punishment also comes from gods, and they can follow you. While the Dryad is not dangerous in and of itself, the conditions surrounding it can prove difficult under many situations. This is why I'm giving them a 5 of 10 for difficulty. It is best to treat the forest with respect when passing through. Alliances with the Dryads are fruitful. They can easily offer you the whole forest bounty. They can aid you with hunting, and even guide you to select which trees are appropriate to harvest. They would only be willing to do so in order to maintain the forest ecosystem. This is delicate work, and will require careful care. And the Dryad has all that. She is a spirit of the forest itself. If anyone was to ever know if something was wrong in the forest, it would be the Dryads. Yet there is more. They are the ones charged with protecting the golden apples, which were sought after in Greek mythology. Something which offers wisdom, wealth, and power. If it is something that the gods want, it is worth a fortune in more than one way, to be sure. Nymphs are often said to seek physical companionship. So yes, you could fall in love with one and even marry. Sure, they will probably outlive you by a fair bit, and will be bound to one place. It would be your choice what to do here. If you choose marriage, you will need to live in the forest. They will need others to pass information to them. Their forest is basically an island that they are bound to, with no chance of ever leaving. But if you dig up and safely move their tree, could you move them to a new location? Maybe, but it won't be easy. Adam followed the woman as she led him out of the forest. They spoke and laughed, though he never took his eyes off the woman before him. Kind and beautiful, she asked him about the outside world. What were towns like? The ocean? The people he met? About everything that she would never be able to see. Smiling, they separated at the forest edge. He asked her to come with him, but adamantly refused. This was the limit of her world. As he stepped beyond the threshold, she faded away, back to the depths of the forest. The Dryads are interesting creatures, to say the least. They have the potential to be powerful foes or benevolent lovers. All of it depends on how you treat the forest. Thank you for watching, adventurers. Please return next time for Vrykolakas. Until then, I'll see you on the roads.